Hey everybody, it's Chappie from the CFP podcast, your college football place. You can find us on cfpcollegefootball.com. And right now we're going to talk transfer portal. So it's June 2nd. The transfer portal has been live and in effect, really in earnest ever since the beginning of January. So we're almost half a year in, and oh my gosh, there have been over 1,000 entries into the portal. There have been a lot of guys who have landed places. There's still some people who are searching and fishing and haven't gotten hooked completely yet. But then we also have players still entering as we speak. So we're going to go through the 10 conferences in FBS. We're going to leave out the independents because really it's Notre Dame and the others. And a lot of those other schools haven't landed too many prospects of note just yet, but we'll get around to that. But we're going to go through starting with the Power Five, and we look at the ACC. As you can see on your screen here, if you're watching the YouTube video, it all starts with Mackenzie Milton, who 24/7 Sports has declared one of the top, if not the top, transfer portal winner or big get, at least among quarterbacks. So Milton, we know his story at UCF. He led the Knights to an undefeated season and they're calling it a national championship in 2017, but the guy wins, and the guy is athletic. The guy is a competitor. The guy knows what to do and knows how to lead his team and just flashes all kinds of confidence, even after completely shattering his knee and doctors saying it's very doubtful that he's going to play college football again. Here he is in Tallahassee. He looked really good in the spring, had a pretty good spring game. He's joined by some guys on the defensive side of the ball. So Keir Thomas comes over from South Carolina. Dude will provide a pretty good pass rush off the outside. He'll be teamed with Jermaine Johnson, who's another defensive end, coming over from Georgia. Now he's by way of Independence Community College, the JUCO route. I believe it was Independence, but he was featured on Last Chance U a couple seasons ago. 5-star coming out of high school, very, very talented player. And then there's also Jamie Robinson, who's a safety coming over from South Carolina. So he and Keir Thomas leaving Columbia, South Carolina, going down south to Tallahassee, Florida, not too far down south. So a lot of good that they got in the transfer portal. There's also a guy to look at in the backfield, DJ Williams, a transfer running back from Auburn, looks to figure in and be a very healthy part of that mix at running back, may ultimately win the job, but he's going to have to fight off a couple of stays from Tallahassee. So Florida State gets it from the ACC. Going to the Big Ten, our winner there is Indiana. So Indiana brings a guy from Florida State, DJ Matthews, very quick, very shifty wide receiver. We'll see him in the slot. He'll stretch defenses and add to an already talented wide receiver room in Bloomington. Ty Freifogel is the guy who leads the way in that receiver room, but Matthews is going to play a very good complement to him, along with a couple other steady receivers they have for the Crimson and Cream. Ryder Anderson comes up from Oxford, Mississippi. He's a defensive end, was a starter for the Rebels last year, and even though Ole Miss's defense wasn't the greatest, Anderson was good at providing havoc and creating havoc on that defensive front. Joining him on that defensive front is Westin Cramer, another guy who was just a stalwart plug in the middle of that defensive line at Northern Illinois for the last couple of seasons. I think that he is going to be somebody who you're going to hear his name called a lot and could end up in second or third team All Big Ten list, Cramer that is. And Anderson, certainly somebody who can add to what's already a pretty good Indiana defense. He's only going to make it that much stronger. And then they also got Cameron Buckley, who, like Matthews, is a wide receiver. He comes from Texas A&M, comes from the SEC, sat out last year, kind of rehabbing an injury, and with everything that was going on with COVID-19, Buckley sat out in 2020, went through part of the spring, but then decided really after the spring game to take his talents and go north to Bloomington, Indiana, to try and bring the Hoosiers a legitimate shot at a Big Ten East championship. Yes, it's a tough road to go through Penn State and Ohio State and even Michigan. I think the Wolverines will be back a little bit this year, and don't count out Michigan State. But if Michael Penix is healthy, he's going to have threats to throw to on the outside. Going to the Big 12, it's Oklahoma. Eric Gray at running back comes over from Tennessee, and we saw what he can do in the spring game, making dudes miss, cutting on a dime, breaking ankles, juking, but he also can provide a little bit of a punch and some power in that backfield. Joining him up front, or playing up front and paving the way for him, Juanie Morris, who was a very highly recruited left tackle when he committed to Tennessee, played a few years out in Knoxville. Things did not pan out the way that they had hoped, and with all that went down with Jeremy Pruitt and some of the investigations that are going on in Knoxville, Morris found it was going to be beneficial to go and play and be tutored by one of the best, if not the best, offensive line coach in Bill Biedenbaugh out at OU. Joining him, coming over from Knoxville, is Key Lawrence, who is somebody who, all pun intended, is going to be a key in that Oklahoma secondary this year. They don't look bad coming in, but there were some hits and some holes that they are going to face in that secondary. And so Lawrence will certainly give them a safety who can come in and play right away in Alex Grinch's defense, playing under Roy Manning, the secondary coach for the Sooners. And then also joining the fold is Mike Woods, who went through the entire spring with the Arkansas Razorbacks, played in the spring game, and I think literally the day after put his name in the transfer portal, and a couple days after that was snatched up by the Oklahoma Sooners. So in an already extremely talented wide receiver group, a group that was so good that Charleston Rambo found it was going to be in his better interest to transfer and go down south to Miami of Florida, Woods comes over and joins that crew, most likely going to contend and maybe even win a Big 12 title ring and perhaps contend for a national championship this year, as Lincoln Riley is looking to get his first playoff victory in 4 tries out there in Soonerland. Going west to the Pac-12, Utah is going to be our winner. Now, it was close between the Utes and the Trojans out at USC, but I think holistically and collectively, the Utah Utes got more overall talent if you were to go on a quantitative scale, and maybe not qualitative, but quantitative certainly. And it starts with quarterback Charlie Brewer. He was a perfect, I think, 12 of 12 or 15 of 15 in the spring game, 100%. Now, I know it's a spring game, and I know that 15 passes is not torching the skies, but nonetheless, he showed to be very effective and very efficient, and I think he's being undersold. Keep in mind, this is somebody who took the Baylor Bears to the Big 12 championship in his sophomore season, playing against Oklahoma, and it's the same Baylor team that led the Oklahoma Sooners in the regular season by 25 points before squandering that lead and losing in the regular season, and then losing again in the Big 12 championship. But Brewer is clearly a leader, a gifted director of the offense, and is going to give Utah some good things at that quarterback spot. There's also TJ Pledger coming over from Oklahoma, speaking of the Sooners, and joining him at running back is Chris Curry, who comes north from LSU. Now, Curry is a banger. Pledger is more of the electric guy. Don't be fooled. He'll run you over if he needs to, but Pledger's the guy who's going to kind of, shimmy and shake and try and get outside of you, whereas Curry would much rather just run right through you, and he likes to lower the shoulder, maybe a little bit of a reckless running style, but certainly fits into that Kyle Whittingham, Andy Ludwig. We're just going to come right at you. We're going to take our 5 up front, and we're going to block the hell out of you, and our running backs are going to run right through you. And then on the defensive side of the ball, stealing somebody from Pac-12 brother Washington is Brandon McKinney, who is a safety and logged some good minutes for the Huskies, and was looking to be a player who likely would have started or at least competed for a lot of playing time under Jimmy Lake's defense out in Washington, but he decides to go out a little bit southeast and play in the Rocky Mountain area of Salt Lake City, Utah. And so collectively all together, I think that, these 4 plus others that they got in the transfer portal That's going to make up a pretty good crew for Utah and gives them a lot of quality to compete for not only the Pac-12 South Championship, but perhaps even the Pac-12 Championship, and maybe, just maybe, contend for a playoff berth if they run the tables and they end up undefeated, or if they have one loss, but it's a quality loss, maybe by the slimmest of margins. And then rounding out the group of five, or I'm sorry, the Power Five, is the Georgia Bulldogs from the SEC. So Georgia, actually, I just reanointed them our SEC transfer portal winner. It was the Florida Gators, but with the recent additions of Arik Gilbert and Darian Kendrick coming over, both five-star talents and definite starting capability, Gilbert at tight end, Kendrick at cornerback, those two really bolstered and boosted up the look of the Georgia Bulldogs by way of the transfer portal. In addition to Kendrick at one corner, there's also Tyke Smith, who was really the first big name that came down to Athens, Georgia this offseason by way of the transfer portal. He played at West Virginia. He's a guy who can play a nickel spot. He can play corner. He can also play safety. Just a very dynamic, very versatile player in that secondary. He likes contact. He's a physical player if he needs to go man-to-man. He's got good eyes to react if he's playing in zone coverage. So with a lot of people questioning Georgia's secondary, I think that the additions of Kendrick and Tyke Smith, and also Brandon Turnage, as you can see on your screen if you're watching the YouTube video, he's a four-star guy, played at safety at Alabama, was in there too deep, was in a rotation of 7 to 8 players in that secondary for the Crimson Tide. He comes over to Athens, Georgia, and with the loss of two starting safeties, Turnage is somebody who's certainly going to get a look and will likely get a good amount of playing time this year, might even become a starter. But that's our Power 5 transfer portal winners. And in just a moment, we'll take a look at the transfer portal winners from the group of 5 schools.